Welcome, everyone, to episode 7 of Spin the Wheel. I'm your host, Chuck Gose, and I'm always joined by my lovely co-host, Rachel Miller. How are you, Rachel?
I'm very well, thank you, Chuck. How are you doing?
Doing great today. So last week, we want to jump into this week's topic because we think it's a very important one. Last week, the wheel chose, I think it was number 4 was the number it landed on, which was building a business case for additional IC investment. And this is the number that I voted for. In fact, back-to-back weeks, number I voted for, picked.
And so, not rigged. So just
feeling
happened.
Pretty lucky.
Just happened. Yeah.
Feeling pretty lucky. But anyway, it's an ongoing topic for internal communicators, and I think based on some conversations you and I've had over the years, and even leading up to this, we have some ideas we think might help or encourage communicators who might be a bit frustrated with that process.
Yeah. So the topic of tonight is basically how to get more resources, how to get more investment for internal comms. So as we're chatting, I'd love to know who's tuning in and joining us. So do feel free to jump into the comments and share who you are and where you're calling in from, or joining us from, and your views on this topic. If I think about how to get investment for internal comms, for me, it's all around business problems. So what are the business problems that we are trying to solve as internal communicators? Because you need to talk the language of the business. There's no point saying we need more people or we need more resources. You need to start with what are the business problems that we need to solve, and therefore how are we going to do it? So it might be by having more people or more resources. You need evidence. So if you're looking at your channels, for example, and you're saying we need to invest in another one or a better one, or have a channels and content manager, for example, to manage our channels, I want to see evidence in terms of what are you doing right now with what you've got? And the mindset for me is, are those channels working super hard for you? Are you clear about the purpose? Are you clear about how they fit into what you're trying to achieve as an organization? And then let's spot the gaps and have that conversation. So what are the business problems you're trying to solve? What's the evidence? Show me a measurement what style is, how are you doing with what you've already got? So it's all about numbers, all about evidence, and all about talking the right language for me. And that's how you get investment in internal comms. It's not a dark art, but you just need to know the right mindset and the right language to use, I think.
And let's go ahead and bring in some of our guests here. I see that Harriet is joining us from London. Hello, Harriet. And I know that right now you guys have a little bit of heat going on in London. So hopefully, Harriet, you are staying cool there. We've got a friend, Jason Anthony, joining us from Atlanta. Erica Goodwin from Arkansas. Arkansas, Atlanta knows a little bit about heat, so probably not getting a lot of sympathy there. Though in the United States, Rachel, we have this little thing called air conditioning. I believe you guys refer to it as aircon.
Yeah, we
Pretty
don't
amazing
have that.
stuff. Pretty amazing stuff. We've got a lot of people from the South here. We've got Jennifer from Bentonville, Arkansas. And of course, our executive producer and my wife, Kristen, joining us here. So please, if you're joining us, let us know where you're from. But also, we want to hear your thoughts and ideas on this topic, because I always like to begin some of these with a little bit of a story, Rachel, and I want to share one with you and others.
Go for it.
That when it comes to investment, what I see happening a lot of times is internal communicators get discouraged so quickly, right away. Like almost the first no is always a no, or someone gives them negative feedback and they abandon it and go on to something else. And I'd like to share this example with communicators from my own background as a communicator at Rolls-Royce, that I had to put together this entire capital scheme for a new internal comms project. I had no idea what a capital scheme even was as I started to go through this process. So it was an amazing learning curve for me to go through this, working with finance people, working with purchasing to go through it. It was amazing. Completed this multi-page document, answered every question under the sun, patting myself on the back for doing a damn good job, and I got rejected. I was like, well, how in the world? Like, this is perfect. But you know what? I went back, got rejected again, got rejected again, and again, and again. And I lost track. The story would be better if I had specifics. It was either the 5th or 6th try
Ouch.
that I got accepted. The project finally got approved, and that took about a year for that to happen. What I learned, which was very sneaky on the part of Rolls-Royce, is that they automatically reject you the first 3 times. Now you're thinking, why would they waste that effort and time? Well, they're wanting to make sure that they aren't wasting effort, time, and resources. They want to make sure that you personally are committed to this project. So if you try once and they say no, it must not have been that important in the first place. But if you keep coming back and you're fine tuning and you're talking to more people and you're building support, all those things that we talk to communicators about doing in this process, then they start believing in the project because they know you believe in the project. So rather than just get discouraged with that no, now that could be Rolls-Royce being Rolls-Royce.
So that could be sneaky. I think that's sneaky and smart. I quite like that because it's showing, it's you testing them, testing your commitment as well, right? Because if you
absolutely
give up after the first go, then as you say, it can't have been that important to you. I quite like that. I've not heard of anyone go to quite that many lengths.
No, I don't know that that was I don't know that that was a formal part of the process or not. Was it more of a cultural thing that built in that like, nope, we want to see people come back time and time again to make sure that this is the project, this is worthy of investment? But yeah, that's a story that I experienced. Now, the only reason I kept going back is because I did believe in it and people were encouraging me to keep trying without me really knowing that getting rejected was part of the process of getting approved, which was fascinating. So my message to communicators is don't give up on it. If you believe in a project, keep finding new allies, keep finding new ways to make it happen, revise, refine. We're used to that doing in our writing, and learn the process because oftentimes this is a new process for some of us. I want to jump back quickly to some of the people joining us. We've got Kim's joined a lot of times in the past week. Huntington Beach, Zane. I don't think Phoenix would exist without air conditioning, Zane.
So lucky.
We got my hometown of Indy here, Meg joining us. Got another one from Phoenix joining. Oh, here we go. This is a good one. What does Chuck's t-shirt say? That's a great question, Erica. And it's a good social justice message, but I think it also applies well to the world of internal comms, which is the we is greater than the me. So we need to build allies. We need to build support for everything that we do and everything that we believe in. It's not just about us, but it's about the community that we are a part of or we are leading. So Erica, the we is greater than the me on that one. So thanks for asking about that. And yeah, poor Joanna, no aircon in Ireland. So
Ireland. And I saw that Kate's joined us as well via LinkedIn. Good work. Kate messaged me just before the show saying, I'm trying to tune in via LinkedIn. So you made it, Kate. I'm delighted. Well done. Good work.
The good thing about live streaming is you can put it out in a lot of different places because I would say professionally, most people are on LinkedIn, but we're also on Twitter. We're also on YouTube to try to catch anybody's. But obviously LinkedIn is where a lot of that conversation is happening. I want to jump on to around this topic of investment, Rachel. You hear a lot of times that like, oh, we have to demonstrate ROI. How do you recommend communicators go about doing that, or how do you advise clients on that topic?
So I'm always keen to make it really tangible, and I like to do crafting a meaningful picture from the numbers. So I want to know the story behind the data, and normally that's things like if I'm analysing an organisation's internal comms and I'm looking for the return on investment ROI, I'm looking at how much are you investing per employee per year, and I like to have things like for the cost of a sandwich or a Mars bar per year. This is what we're delivering, and these are the business problems that we're solving through our internal communication. So I quite like to get it right down to the nitty-gritty and right down to the numbers, but crafting that meaningful picture where it's tangible and talking about outcomes. It's not always about got this many channels, doing this many stories. Return on investment has to be the so what, the outcomes of what's happening as a result of this investment that we're making. And sometimes that will take a long time. Sometimes for behavioural change, particularly, it's not always immediately apparent. So you need to do incremental measurement. You need to keep an eye on, one of my rules for measurement is measure what you treasure. So if you're thinking about ROI, what is it that you treasure? What is it that's super important to your organisation? And look at it through that lens, because you could measure all sorts. But really refining that right down to how do we demonstrate the worth? How do we demonstrate what that return is on the investment that we're making? What about you? What are your thoughts on ROI?
Well, one every week, or last couple of weeks, shouldn't say every week, that's a lie. The last couple of weeks, I've been doing takeaways from this of quick lessons learned from individuals. So as lessons you've learned about building business case and ROIs, please share them in the chat, because we can pull those into the takeaways. I can already tell one, Rachel, is going to be that measure what you treasure, because I've always struggled with the point when people say measure what matters. You hear people will say that. My argument there is sometimes you don't know what matters until you start measuring, but measure what you treasure automatically points to these are the things that our organization cares about.
Yeah, because you can measure stuff that doesn't matter. And I see that all the time, where people are so fixated on how many people were at the team briefing. So how many people were briefed, and having these spreadsheets for going back years of these are how many bums on seats we had at the town hall, or this is how many people have sat and listened to a team brief. I'd much rather know the number of questions. That data is far more important for me. That gives me crafting a meaningful picture around the data is how many questions were asked at the town hall. That's a great number to measure. Is it going up? Why is it going up? Is it because people feel more able to ask questions? They trust our leaders more? That's really useful information. Just telling me how many people were tuned in remotely to a town hall doesn't really tell me very much at all, unless the numbers go massively down. Something that I heard actually from Brilliant Inc. at the PRSA Connect conference last year, which has really stuck with me in thinking about measurement particularly. And I think it was in Jackie's presentation where she said, if you're trying to measure the return on investment for town halls, you could count how many people are sat in the town hall, or when the town hall's on, walk around your building if we're pre-pandemic, walk around the building and talk to people who are at their desk and say, why aren't you at the town hall? And when they did that, they found that actually the story wasn't about, you could change up the format, have external speakers and change the format of the town hall. But actually the meaningful story from the data was there's a problem with line managers, because the number one reason that people weren't going to the town hall was because their line managers weren't allowing them, weren't letting them. So that really resonated with me. And I thought it was a fantastic presentation. It made me think differently around what do we measure? Why do we measure what we measure? So if you're trying to ask for investment, having real clarity around how does internal comms happen, what gets in our way. It could be something as simple as our line managers don't see the value in letting their people go to attend something.
And what I wanted to do here, so I see this happening from time to time, is that people do not know how to calculate ROI. So this is a very simple formula. One of my rants, which Rachel, there are many, and we will talk about rants a little bit later on, is communicators saying, well, I'm not very good at math. Well, okay, let's pump the brakes on that. This is pretty simple math to calculate ROI, which is simply the profit, what you return, what you're getting out of it, minus what you put into it, which is the investment, divided by the investment. That's your ROI. And then they might say times by 100, but you end up with a 0.2, that's 20% ROI, which means your payoff is 5 years. It takes to get to 100%. So, but I think what happens a lot of times is communicators, we get hung up on saying, okay, we need to establish an ROI. So then we start coming up with numbers and inventing numbers and doing forecasts of things that we can't even remotely control out there.
Yeah.
I mean, man, it's not even good data at that point where we are calculating. And I think really what the organization is asking for is, what are we going to get out of this? It's not always a percentage number, a calculation out there. And so there's another process that's like ROI that I like called PIO. So it's process, impact, and outcome. So the process is, and I see this all the time working with clients at SocialChorus, we're helping them improve their process of how they communicate and how they publish. So that's an automatic return. People that might have spent 2, 3, 4 hours publishing content before now spend minutes publishing content. So there's an automatic process improvement there. Okay, so what's the impact of that on the communicator's daily life? Well, now that allows you to do so much more. You're not spending time hunkered over one vehicle, duplicating processes over all these other vehicles. You're publishing once and sending everywhere. So you've got your process improvement, which creates an amazing impact on that communicator's life. And then the outcome is, well, you've got a better communications flow for all your employees out there. So I think that PIO model, which again is process, impact, outcome, can also help a communicator think through not so much the ROI calculation, but more that ROI conversation that people are looking for. And leaders say, what's the ROI? What are we getting out of it? They don't always necessarily mean numbers. I mean, how's this organization going to be different? What's the impact that's going to have? And what's the outcome as a result of this? And the more that communicator can show the impact on their life as a professional, the impact on line managers, the impact on frontline employees, the impact on leaders, the more people impacted, the greater the outcome, then the more support you're able to get out.
It sounds so straightforward when you say that. And I've just spent time today judging the Institute of Internal Communication awards, a couple of categories in there. And that lack of measurement is so apparent. I've been judging industry awards for years, and we talk a good talk, you know, and when it comes down to brass tacks and you're trying to analyze an award entry and you're looking at the language, it's still the language of outputs. It's not the language of outcomes. So the key part of that model is outcomes. And so often that's missing. And when I look at that, particularly with such a robust criteria for judging, the way it works is you have to go back to your objectives. You have to have smart objectives. What do we set out to achieve? You know, what was the purpose behind what we were trying to do? What did good look like? What do we want employees to do, say, think, feel differently? You know, we talk about this so much. And then when you come to the end of a project or a campaign, or hopefully as you go, you're iteratively, you know, measuring. If you don't know what the intention was, you have no hope of measuring at all. Because if you didn't set the intention or the outcome, then you've no hope of measuring. And it's not a dark art, but we really struggle, as having read so many entries today, people really struggle to articulate that. So I'm curious if anyone has any mechanisms that they use for ROI. Do jump in the comments.
I want to pull in this comment from Joanna, because it's a great segue into what I was going to talk about next, which is one of the big piece of advice I share with communicators is become a problem solver. Help solve problems inside your organization. That will help build support for an investment. And it goes back to aligning with what your organization is trying to do. If your objective is to say, we want more people to open emails, that's not directly solving anybody's problems out there. It's why. Why is opening emails more important? Why is clicking through to news and information more important? Why is downloading an app more important? Why is putting information on people's phones more important? What does that deliver for the organization? What problems does that solve? Because once you start solving leaders' problems, and not even just the C-suite, VPs, people managers, you start solving people's problems out there, you then start building these allies in place who will help support you. So often when I've had, and I know I shared that Rolls-Royce example because that was a big pot of money I was going after, but even for those small pots of money, so often I hear communicators say, well, I don't have the budget. I don't have the money to do it, so then I can't. There are other people in your organization, you help solve their problems, they might have the budget. They might have the resources to help you do it because they want to make an investment. It's why I see the importance of communicators aligning themselves with IT and HR. And one of the biggest ones is health and safety. If you've got a health and safety organization at your company, they are always looking at creative ways to do new communications because that goes back to solving a business problem. Health and safety is an issue with organizations.
Completely.
I think their problem, you have new resources available to you. So here we've got Zane, I know, enjoying his air conditioning, be a problem solver. Yes, Zane, not just on the job, but in life. Unfortunately, we can't solve all the problems out there, Zane, but we can certainly work to try to solve all those problems.
I think Joanna's point around what's keeping your senior leaders awake at night is really important. I also want to make sure I know what the top 3 things are on employees' minds, and I make sure my leaders are aware of that. So I like to know both. I like to know what's on top of mind for my leaders, and I like to know what's top of mind for my employees. And if they're not aware of each other's, that's part of my job as the conduit, between that gluing as part of the organization and binding it to itself. It's making sure that my internal comms is not just reflecting what's top 3 things on the mind of leaders. It has to be what's on the mind of employees too. So I think it's both. I think it's making sure that there is clarity across the organization and everyone is aware of what all the problems are from both sides.
The other thing that I see as a gap when we talk about building investment is, what did you do with the past investment? What did you do to deliver value there? So I see about ROI, people wanting to do that at the beginning of a project or use it to support a project. What I don't see is them doing it afterward to articulate back to the business saying, hey, remember when we spent money on this, or we invested time and energy in this? This is now what we got as a result of that. So you've now showed them that return. It's no different than asking for feedback. You ask for feedback, then you share people, here's what you told us, now here's what we're doing as a result. This whole building support for investment is very much the same way. If you get it, then come back and tell people, here's what we accomplished with that. So that when you come back, and think about investment could be a lot of different things. It could be new technology. It could be a new employee that's a part of it. So what if it is a new headcount that you want to bring into the organization, and you went a year ago to ask for a new person and you got it? And you go, we're growing, we need another person. Talk about what the success was of bringing that other person in and how that helped the organization and what all their accomplishments were, because that will then success builds on success. But if you keep that stuff quiet, they don't know what ended up happening as a result of that.
No, there's a good question that's come in here. I'm not this anonymous one.
Is this one?
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's the one. So do you think there's a gap between demonstrating outcomes and business performance? So if we're creating a business case to improve alignment with company values, do we still need to try and put a money figure in for how it could improve revenue? That's a great question. I think that
if it is around improving revenue, then yes, I think you can put in guesses of, by doing this, implementing this, launching this, creating this, we think we will get X return out of it. But I do think you can become more concrete with that when it's that we want to improve health and safety scores by 10%. We want to reduce lost workday case rate by 10%. I was talking with a communicator once, and I got myself in a little bit of trouble, Rachel. I know that surprises you.
I'm really shocked by that.
They said we need to increase our random acronym number percent by 3% this year. And I was like, okay, what does that number even mean? And they're like, we have no idea. I was like, so what is 3%? Like, is it, do I stop buying pencils if I'm an employee? Like, does that help with the, like, I have no idea what that even means.
Stationery is critical. Don't take away pencils.
So if we don't understand what we're trying to go after, that's stop number one. Like, let's understand exactly what we're trying to solve. And I know Harriet chimed in being asked once what I can do with zero budget. Unfortunately, there are a lot of times that we end up doing things with zero budget, or we borrow budget, or we get creative in it.
Or we cross-charge. I've cross-charged when I was in-house. I used to get stakeholders I used to cross-charge from my department out to stakeholders where they paid for things. Well, it's just always worth trying. I remember in 2008, post-crash, when we all had to suddenly do more with less. We all had camera crews. This is just before proper smartphones, where we were all having these big budgets for comms, and they completely slashed, and our budgets were then pretty much zero, and we had to get creative, and we had to dig deep, and we had to do so much more with less. And I think we're better off for it, frankly, because we upskilled in lots and lots of different areas, and I think we're about to see the same again. I think
that's a little bit of a misnomer for some people too, that think, oh, the larger the organization, the more money that's available, you can kind of do whatever you want out there. And we know that's not true either. It's almost, what I'm seeing is, the larger the organization, the more of a process there is to make that investment. Sometimes the smaller the organization, the easier it is to implement not just even a new investment or process, but even change in the organization. We see that as communicators. Here's something that Meg shared around 3 winning components. It addresses leadership priorities, what employees want and needs, and align support of your business strategy or communication strategy. Absolutely. You can check all those boxes. Here's Emily. Make sure the why is very clear. Yep. The why we're going through this effort. It's not just always the money being spent, but it's the time and energy and effort and the how much care you put into this investment. That's where that reporting out, because the last thing leaders, employees want to see is a company spend money on a new, again, piece of technology not have anybody really care about it or invest their own time and energy and effort and creativity into it. So I think that, and here's a thought here for you, Rachel, about that everybody needs to make an investment in internal communications. If we think it's just ours, now sometimes what also ends up happening, Rachel, as we see is these large organizations, if some departments don't see, let's say, the communications team doing what they want, they're going to go off and do their own thing because they've got the budget.
Yes.
They can just
We
go
love
lead it
that.
themselves. And so then you end up with different platforms and different systems and different geographies. And then somebody's got to try to go through and make sense of everything. This is also a great point from our friend Jason. What happens if we don't make this investment? Now that, I think sometimes for some leaders, they're like, well, things are good. We're good here. But that's where that feedback you talked about, Rachel, that's where that's so important, to make sure that we are measuring what they treasure. Because if it's something that they care about, they're going to probably want to maybe listen a little bit more for investment.
And that goes back to the language of the business.
Area.
That goes right back to our first point of our conversation about understanding the language of your business and the problems that you're trying to solve. It's tapping into that. I think Erica's point's a good one around, it's about, internal comms is too important to be left down to one team, one department, one person. It's everyone's responsibility. I feel like I need that tattooed on me. I say it so often. But I think it is understanding where the boundaries are and where the responsibilities are. And it does come down to budget as well. Everybody's responsible for internal communications. So internal communication, the overarching way a company communicates, and then internal communications, tools, tactics, methodology, channels, that's in our budget line. So there is a blender, there is a mix.
So anything, and we're coming up, man, this time absolutely flies by.
It flies by.
On this. So we did find out, I'm not sure why Alyssa's anonymous either.
Oh,
LinkedIn, but Alyssa, hello, thanks for introducing yourself on here. It is time to go to the wheel. So here is the topics that we had, and let's bring the wheel into the conversation. This is what we had last week, and we crossed off our building a business case. These are the other topics that we have out there. So we're going to spin the wheel and see what we land on. Nope, we're actually not spinning the wheel this week, everybody, because we're doing something different for this next show. So the last 7, Rachel and I have spun the wheel. We've taken your feedback in. Now for the next one, I'm going to introduce a bit of a new subject for Rachel, and it's the concept of Festivus. Now, Rachel is not that familiar with it. I personally celebrate Festivus every year, December 23rd. A big part of Festivus is an airing of grievances. So you're supposed to share on that day all the ways that everyone in your life has disappointed you. Now, we're not going to quite get that detailed with it. We're not going to talk to anybody who's disappointed us. We're all thrilled you're here with us. But Rachel and I have some rants that we're going to talk through, what we see from a comms world, from a leadership world out there. So think of it as a mashup between a Festivus airing of grievances. We're going to spin the wheel on these grievances. We would love to see all of you come in and share. If you want to join the show, let me know, because we could even have you come in and be a part of this. It's our last episode of this season of Spin the Wheel, so we thought we would have some fun with it, rant a little bit. Again, few people love a good rant, Rachel, as much as I do out there. We've got some good ones. We've got some good ones on the list. Some that you and I are very much in agreement on. Some, Rachel, that you and I are very not much in agreement on when it comes to some of these rants out there. So we want all of you to join us again next week. Hopefully this has been a helpful conversation around building that investment. And if you're out there, I know now might be a really hard time to get that investment, but it also might be a great time to get that investment. I see communicators now building more bridges into other departments, getting support that they didn't have before, because organizations are now seeing gaps that they had in communication. So now is a time to start building. And yes, Erica just called out one of my favorites, which Erica will be on there. We're not going to call about it right now. This is a chance to go out and get that investment for us. So anything that Rachel and I can do to help, be your supporter, be your cheerleader, be your guider. Again, measure what treasures, think about ROI, think about PIO that we talked about. Rachel, any final parting thoughts?
I'm going to say what I always say. Is it still a really difficult time? Keep digging in deep, keep asking for help, keep reaching out to the global comms community. We are all in this together.
Yeah, so Zane's looking forward to it. Rants, I think Alyssa, our anonymous link, rant equals therapy. Alyssa, you get it. Everyone, again, the we is greater than the me. Join us back here next week as we will spin the wheel on our airing of grievances. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.